All right. Okay, we are live. Smexy Magician. I like where did first of all, how you doing?
I'm doing good. That's kind of why this was just a good time to call in because I don't really have anything I'm doing right now.
Gotcha,
No
gotcha. Cool.
obligation.
Yeah, I've liked seeing your comments and your ideas that you've shared in the past on videos of mine. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this talk. Um, where did your name come from, the Smexy Magician?
I just kind of make random usernames.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay, okay. Okay, so you shared something with me, so I will pull this slide up. There we go. Effective vegan activism. There we go.
Okay, so this part, um, so I'm just gonna read out the thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, accept the hard truth: most people, including vegans, have a shortage of empathy and logical thinking, and also pertaining to logic, valuing sapient creatures is not inherently illogical, just like valuing your own family. So, in terms of the logical thinking for the non-vegans, what it pans out to is how they actually implement their moral stances in real life. Whereas with the vegans, the logical thinking pertains to kind of the effectiveness of their activism.
Mm.
Like, are they, because there's some actions that a vegan could take that may harm the vegan cause, whatever you think those are. They're
Mm-hmm.
not doing it from a place of intelligence. And then
Yeah.
also, even people who are vegan, in terms of all moral causes and activism activities, they're not maximizing their positive impact on the world. So, like in terms of like modern slavery, I don't think most vegans in first world countries are doing the most they could to minimize that process from happening.
Y- You mean actual like human slavery?
Yeah, human slavery, modern
G-
human slavery. Most
Gotcha.
vegans aren't taking all the actions they could to minimize that thing.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a very interesting topic because yeah, I think people have a hard time being able to focus on a lot of things to take care of, and especially the further it gets away from them. So, like I'm aware that there is still slavery that takes place, and I'm sure like in some ways, there might be some somewhat nearby, but for the most part, it would be in like foreign countries overseas. And I think a lot of people, it's very daunting for them to get involved with something so far away, similar to slavery. I'd say something like female circumcision in like Islamic countries. It's one of those things where people hate it, they despise it, but they because it's like in our country we could vote in politicians that might be fighting for what we want change in, but to get change in another country, I think it's complicated for most people, including myself. Um, so yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Like, what people should be doing to like how can somebody get involved with something that's so far away from them?
Well, I don't have any thoughts on that specific issue, but I was just bringing it up as something that that vegans specifically, even though they would consider like veganism is like, I don't want to say that you're better than other people, but you're like maybe doing a more morally correct action. But,
Mm.
and I'm not trying, it's not about hypocrisy, it's just about the practical limits of what one person can do to minimize their harm on other beings.
Gotcha. And just to clarify, you are vegan, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I feel the same way. Like whenever I'm talking about vegans, I'll say vegan as if I'm talking about these people and not including myself, but I am including myself. So, yeah. No, I think you make a good point. Um, yeah. So what are your thoughts on it?
Um, I think it's kind of it's like a stoic type thing that you're just accepting what is in control and what's not.
Hmm. Well, accepting as in like
Because
the example of something like slavery, where you're saying that somebody that is feeling like they're doing something virtuous, like being vegan and fighting for animals, but then ignoring the slavery element, because I would say that there's a lot.
no,
Oh, okay,
I mean that you are accepting what is within the limits of reality in terms of how much people can actually focus and think about just every issue in the world.
gotcha.
In I'm talking about this. Do you know the term dystopia?
No, I don't.
It's like um, the vegans who kind of they have like an impending sense of doom because it's like they think like everybody's evil and everything's evil,
Hmm.
and
Oh,
they
the ones that say like it'd be better off if humans died, and they don't care about humans, but they care about animals.
not necessarily.
Hmm.
Um, just if if you're if you're vegan but you're like feeling bad about everyone and that I'm just surrounded by terrible people and all that. But and also that I think this is important to recognize because people can get burnt out with activism. They're like, "Oh, I'm not, nothing's ever going to change at all."
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, and it's kind of tricky because in one sense it matters, in another sense it doesn't. Like I don't think change should affect whether you continue to do it yourself or not. I think that's a thought a lot of people have. I've talked to people that say, "Oh, it's wrong to eat animals," but everybody else does, and it's not going to change, so I might as well stick to it. Even if you knew it wouldn't change in your lifetime, the actions you do still affect living creatures. So there is that. Yeah, I don't. I get bummed out when I think of the idea of things not changing and like the world never becoming like fully vegan or anything. But it doesn't really affect my stance on if I like what I want to fight for.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, I think unless you somehow knew that doing the stuff that you're doing on this channel would actually make less people vegan, then I don't think you'd not want to do it.
Correct. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, anything I could find out that would make. I mean, there are some principles I hold where if I knew an outcome was bad, I would still hold the principle. But yeah, something like having a negative effect on a principled outcome, I would definitely change the actions. But yeah, I guess that's kind of a big point of my channel is the downside I see in most activism. Because if I'm guessing if most people were being realistic and had to imagine like when would we see veganism kind of take over in the future, it's got to be somewhat out of our lifetimes, like anybody that's still alive. Especially the idea of it being so accepted that it became like a legal thing. It's so beyond our lifetime that if when you watch a movie like Dominion or Earthlings or something and you see that the standard practices are these horrible practices and the idea of turning people vegan and getting the world to go vegan is so far out of reach, it kind of blows my mind that most vegans aren't having way more of a focus on getting legal changes for welfare for animals.
Yeah, well, what? Yeah, whether they're killed or not, the animals, if there ever is a vegan world, which I'm not sure if I believe, but if there is, by that time, all the animals that vegans care about, most probably all they're all going to be dead.
Mm-hmm.
All the ones that are living right now.
Yeah.
So if you just kind of don't advocate for the welfare, then I think that's not doing them justice.
Yeah. Yeah. Um. Yeah. Yeah. No. It's a pretty wild thing. I just. I think maybe it comes into the shortage of empathy and logic. I I really don't know. I don't know what's in the minds of these people, and I don't mean that in like a negative way. Like I have good friends that are like this. I mean, I have good friends that aren't even vegan, but I have good friends that are vegan and think it's horrible to focus on like welfare or anything else. And I just wonder like what they mean by that. Like if maybe they haven't thought about the time spent and the time doing something. Um, like like how much time do you specifically need to spend on a certain thing, because we all spend various different amounts of time on different things. And yeah, anyways, it just kind of blows my mind, and I don't know if it's a lack of empathy, because I mean the reason somebody would be vegan is because of empathy. um, but the fact that they can know like teeth are cut out, tails are cut off of pigs, all these horrible things are happening in these factory farms, and they could be fighting for change. Like when we think of like wrong acts that we want to fight for, like legalizing gay marriage and you know all these different things, like the further you go in the past, like ending slavery, you know, circumcision, all these different things that we're fighting for. The fact that on that list isn't everything from slavery of animals up until death, that none of those things cross their minds whatsoever. It's just this idea of, I want to create a new vegan, but I don't want to try to get the hundreds of thousands of non vegans that would help me fight for regulation changes to stop this cruelty.
Yeah. So just another thing on the point above. This is only my anecdotal experience, but um, like intersectionality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm
Yeah.
not, I'm not getting just they have all those different categories of what could make someone oppressed, and I think there's more nuance, but this isn't the point. The point is that in my experience, I've seen that people who are part of the quote unquote oppressed groups that already face societal challenges have less energy to devote to other people's suffering,
Mm.
which is kind of, have you seen the movie Parasite?
Yes.
So that's a theme of that movie that I don't want to spoil what happens, but
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I think I'm ready to go to the next slide.
Yeah, yeah, go
I
for it.
don't have too much else to say about
That's
this.
fine. Before we read the next slide, I just want to read something from the comments. So somebody said, legal changes are all that matter. If we still had slavery, let's see, we would still have slavery if law permitted it. So if you just try, similar to trying to get people to go vegan, and then if they do, they do, it's great, and if they don't, they don't. You still have these bad outcomes where if you have the law changed, then that is what forces people to have to do something or have the consequences. And that's definitely a very good point. I would say that the vegans that are fighting for, that don't care about welfare or reducing, that are fighting just for pure animal liberation, I guess their goal is to create vegans, and then out of that to hopefully have laws that outlaw all animal harming practices. But I would say that when something is legal and it's wrong and you think it should be illegal, that it should be an important goal to try to get that change. So if we have these things like, while it's legal to eat meat, that these things are legal practices in factory farms, that even if the ultimate goal is to get liberation, you would still want to make all these things illegal. And so yeah, I think that is a good point.
The one thing I just found, I just saw that I could actually look at the comment section here.
Mm,
Um, I saw that there was someone who commented we'd still have slavery if the law permitted it.
mm-hmm,
Well, we do in the world, not in not in first world countries, but it exists
mm-hmm.
in the world. And there are some places where slavery is technically legal, but it happens and it's an open secret. So
Gotcha.
so laws don't necessarily always translate to
They
actions.
don't always, but I feel like it's your best option. Because I mean, before being in a society with laws and prisons and whatnot, everything's just a free for all. As soon as you get the laws, like right now, your average person, if they went to go try to murder somebody, there's a good chance, especially nowadays with DNA testing and surveillance and all kinds of things, they're going to get caught. And if they get caught, they're going to go to jail. So, sure, there are examples of cases where people can get away with things, but I would say it's more important to have a law in place than it is to have. Depending on the numbers, it's more important to have that than to have minds changed. I would much rather live in a country that made like gay marriage legal and had like 25% of the population hated gay people. I'd much rather have that than a country that had gay marriage not legal and only 10% of the country hated gay people. Like I would sacrifice a percent of the people that are accepting to get that law in place, because I think laws in a big sense are everything. Now if they don't get followed, then that's an issue as well, and then you want to fight for getting it followed. But I can't imagine anything more important than laws.
I do think though that in poorer countries, not that there's not corruption in more first world countries too, but in poorer countries, enforcement of the law is very it's more difficult. The law enforcement, they're more
Hmm.
spread out, and they're they're more even more willing to take bribes. Not that it doesn't
Hmm.
happen in first world countries. So I think banning animal products, it could be kind of like the prohibition era, where it actually just it could even make pump more money into the meat industry if done the wrong way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I mean, there are issues like that, but I just don't necessarily agree with that concept. I do agree that we are very privileged, and in non first world countries, the the likelihood of there being some corruptness with the police and whatnot, and laws not working out, that's true. But it doesn't change the fact that the goal for those places would to be to get away from that, to fix their systems, because the ultimate goal would be to have the laws in place that are done well. Like and same thing in a first world country. The best thing that we could have would be being even better at keeping people following our laws and whatnot. So.
So, so there's a comment by Triangle. Animal welfare laws are already being violated en masse within the industries people largely know and approve of. Those, why do you think that would change? I actually think it it's a stronger argument for vegans that they can say, look, the animal agriculture industry is they're violating the law, and it changes it in other people's perception from like, oh, they're just doing something that may be wrong to, oh, they're criminals, which that shouldn't be that way, but it looks worse for the animal agriculture industry if
Yeah.
they're shown to be violating the laws, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And not only that, I mean, if somebody's not following through with something that's already in the legal system, then that's why we fight. That's why we talk about it. That's why we make it well known that we want this change. And some things won't change, but luckily, I mean, you can look throughout history and see changes for the better because people will stand up and fight for a certain cause. And in this case, if something's not being followed, then we will, if we get enough people to point this out, like, look, this isn't followed, then hopefully they would make them follow that, and laws would change in that regard. And in one case, I think this happens in the UK and maybe Australia, but like the law basically makes it where farms have to have security footage that like runs to basically a 24/7 security footage that goes to the government. I can't remember what the name of the type of security camera is, but anyways, I think that would be an important thing to be in farms.
Yeah, that actually, to me, that ties back into the first point about the logic and intelligence, that I wouldn't have the knowledge to know that. So that would be a limitation in my activism. Just the fact that I didn't know what you just told me,
Mm. Hmm.
kind of like a maybe not a logical limit, but a practical limit to how effectively I could actually advocate for those things.
Hmm. Yeah. Has vegan, hey buddy, says vegans want to end animal slavery, not regulate it. Yeah, I guess that's just what I don't get. Why? I don't like. I get why you'd want to end it, but if it's not ended yet, you would want to regulate it. Like that. I guess that's kind of how every possible moral thing that should be a legal thing should be. Um, I really just can't think of any situation where there would be something where it's legal to do something that a person or people think is wrong to do and should be illegal, and while it's legal, you wouldn't want it regulated. It just it kind of blows my mind. And actually, it made me think of a question that I wanted to ask you specifically. To ask Has, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts as well, Smexy. But the question is, if you don't want welfare and reduction, and you just want total liberation and that's the only thing worth fighting for, does that mean that there's no benefit to an individual becoming vegan outside of just having an extra number? Like if one person said, why should I become vegan? I won't make a difference. I feel like the people that are against regulation changes and welfare would have to say, you're right. You won't make a difference aside from you're an added one. You can't say to that person, you're going to save 200 animals a year being vegan, because obviously, according to this and most vegans I talk to, they don't care about that. They don't care about reducing the numbers. They don't care about regulating anything. So becoming vegan, the only benefit would be that if you looked at the percentage of how many people are vegan or not, that percentage goes up by a person. And if that's not accurate, then I'm curious to hear what it is, because if somebody saves, let's say, 200 animals a year by going vegan, then essentially you could do the math to figure out how many people would have to do meatless Mondays to equal that same thing, and how many regulations would have to change to have some kind of an equivalent harm reduction. And it just shocks me that that element seems to be ignored.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it's just I do think you have to. My opinion is, of course, that you kind of, I mean, you could see it on the thing, like except like reduction, but I don't like there's nothing that I can necessarily say to someone who disagrees with that to convince them. I don't think they're necessarily wrong. That
Yeah.
that
Hey, I just
they're
want to tell you real
that they're
quick. I don't know if you know, but there's like a humming noise when you talk. And I don't know if that's a mic issue that is easily fixed or not. I don't think it's bad enough to stop the conversation if you can't fix it, but I've just noticed there's a handful of people talking in here that hear it as well.
okay. I'll try something to quickly resolve that.
Oh, perfect. I think it fixed. Oh, actually, you muted yourself, so maybe it's not. Okay, Has
You
says,
hear it now?
nope. That sounds all fixed up.
Okay, that's good then.
Has says it's not that I don't want welfare and reduction. It's that I wouldn't want the number of animals killed to be reduced. Or that I wouldn't want the number of animals to be reduced. It's that I won't implicitly advocate for animals being property by promoting reductionism. Reduction. Promoting. What are your thoughts on
Well,
that?
well, I mean, I think if you're advocating that they should be treated better, um, that's still advocating for them to have a higher status than like a car. So
Mm-hmm.
I still think you are you can be advocating for welfare um, within the bounds of advocating for their rights and status higher being higher morally.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's just yeah, it's so weird. Well, and part of the problem is when somebody asks like a vegan why they're vegan or why they care about an animal, like our answer about caring about the animal is because they're sentient, right? Like it's because they can perceive things, they can feel. It usually comes down to the ability to feel. Like that's kind of a top thing, and maybe a want for existence or something. But the ability to suffer, and so that's why we care about them, but we don't want to promote the idea of making it illegal to harm them. Like so right now, it it's illegal to like kill a dog for fun or whatever, but you can kill a cow to eat it. So I guess the reason I think it's kind of silly, and I don't mean that in a mean or negative way, but the reason it's kind of silly to not fight for changes with animal treatment in factory farms would be like right now if it became legal to stab a dog, just to stab it in the same way that somebody can take a pig, a runt pig, and smash it into the ground or whatever. And let's say it didn't die, but they just left it there. They wouldn't get a fine for torturing it and just leaving it there. But you would get a fine or get in trouble for stabbing a dog and not killing it, but just leaving it there. And if the law changed and made it to where now that is legal, I feel like that's worth fighting for. I feel like we can see this issue that, like, because we look at issues as what's legal or not legal, right? Like that's why you fight for gay marriage because it wasn't legal. You fight for interracial marriage because it wasn't legal. You fight for all these different rights and changes to be put in like the Constitution and these things. So I guess Has, if you're still there, would you not want to fight for it to be illegal to stab a dog for fun? And I know a lot of people put too much like value on domesticated pets and whatnot versus like farmed animals, which obviously people like me and you and probably Smexy here view cats and dogs and pigs and cows basically equals, and we don't want any of them
I
hurt.
do view dogs a tiny bit differently.
Oh, okay.
Not massively different enough to like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm gonna eat a hamburger or something. But
Yeah.
one difference with dogs is when you pet a dog, they they both the human and the dog secrete a hormone called oxytocin. So
Yeah, that's
the
yeah.
dog actually is if the dog likes the human, they are getting pleasure from being with the human.
Mm.
Whereas I think some other types of pets, like people who have like a pet pig, it could be almost like a relationship where the pig's only with you because you feed them and they gain no joy out of being with you.
Gotcha.
But in terms of moral status, I don't view dogs and cats differently.
Gotcha. I'm gonna read one more comment and then I'll let you get to reading that next part. But Turning Veganese, also known as AJ, says the problem with Carson, and I'm Carson by the way, Reasonable Vegan is Carson. The problem with Carson is that his libertarianism holds him back. And then legal, though, in quotes, what lame excuse is that for who cares what's legal? Vegans care about what's moral. Yeah, but when you care about what's moral, you want that to be legal within your society. Like, so I don't think it's good to go kill people, but if it was legal in our society, my focus would be making it illegal in our society, making it to where people are deterred from killing people. Like that legal though is that's everything. That's everything in life. Obviously, if you could convince people to not kill people and to not punch people and to not steal their stuff, that's good to change their morals and to get them thinking about this stuff. But way more important than getting some people to change their opinions is getting the law on your side. You can't change every opinion. There's going to be a lot of like bigoted people in the world that you can't change from certain opinions they have. But it doesn't mean that you wouldn't want the law to be on the side. Anyways, yeah, I'll stop rambling about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think this slide should go pretty quick.
Yeah, go for it.
So just some quick ideas about retaining vegans, since I think if you look at like the numbers, um, there, I think it's hard to deny that there are a lot of people who don't stick with it for one reason or another. Even though there's like people who've made videos saying, "Oh well, more people stick to veganism than like other fitness trends," but that's not it's not like a health thing anyway. So
Well, I think the point about that is there are people that go have you seen like the documentary What the Health?
yeah,
Like there's people that might see that and go, "Oh, I want to go vegan," because they're not thinking about animals. They just think like, "Oh, okay, if this helps my health, I'll do it." And so similar to all the trends, there are people that start keto, people that start Mediterranean diet, all the different diets. Pretty much all diets will at least make you lose weight if you stick to it, but most people don't stick to any diets. So it's hard. It'd be hard to know how many people try out the veganism diet as a diet, but similar to every diet that everybody quits, like at some point in their life, like nobody's going to do keto the rest of their life or paleo the rest of their life. The only people that will stay vegan the rest of their lives are people that are doing it for the animals. And so any number, if out of all the people that go vegan for various different reasons, if 84% of them in any given time stop being vegan, then the fact that somebody did it because they thought they were going to lose weight and they didn't lose weight and then now they want to try a different diet, I don't think that tells us anything about veganism.
well, I think it does because um there's some people are fence sitters. They may care to a certain extent, but they can't handle the cognitive dissonance associated with social pressures, and they don't want, like, they might say, "Oh, I don't," they some of it's just they don't want to do it, but
Hmm.
um so I think there are fence sitters. I know that there's the argument for vegans. Oh, you should be vegan no matter what and sacrifice everything for it.
Hmm.
But I think there are a sizable group of people who care to an extent, but they wouldn't want to sacrifice everything for it.
Yeah. Well, I'm one of those people as well. I'm curious to find out with each individual. I think most people are the type that are vegan for the animals, but if their health was at risk or something else, they wouldn't. I was watching something with some of the founders, and I didn't know this, but most of the founders, or I guess all the founders, um, expected to have health issues, but they were doing it because they thought it was the moral thing to do no matter what. Now, I think that there must be some kind of a mental health issue if somebody were to do that. I don't mean any offense if anybody listening to this would do that. Like I know Vegan Gain said that if he needed meat to be healthy and survive, he would just let himself die. But yeah, some of the
He has some.
founders,
I
like, it,
oh,
oh, go for it.
I was it was on one of his streams. I He actually has some. I don't really want to get into it, but he has some beliefs about karmic effects of eating meat.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I do think some of his stuff, even if it's like there's logical terminology around it, I think a lot of his motivations for veganism, well, they're not logical at all.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I was just shocked to see like I'm not sure about Donald Watson, but I was watching a thing about the life of one of the ladies that started the Vegan Society, and it was just showing her stances on things, and she was just talking about how she thought that there's a good chance that her health was going to decrease and she was going to die, but she just had to do it. And then she was doing an interview when she was older, like in the 80s, and saying that she was very grateful to find out that it's actually very healthy and there's no downside, and especially once they figured out stuff with B12 and supplements, everything was fine. But it just kind of blew my mind that it was like this idea of I'm doing this for moral reasons, uh, and there's such strong moral reasons that I would sacrifice my own life if humans were designed to need a certain animal product, and that just kind of blows my mind. I guess I am curious how many vegans take that stance. So for you, do would you sacrifice any amount of health or well being for the sake of the animals?
I would, but I think there would have to be there's certain qualitative elements that I would accept. I would probably accept more degradations to physical health than mental health.
Mm.
Um,
How much?
I don't really know because I think it's a very qualitative thing where it depends exactly what, like if you were told that maybe your long term memory would decrease by 10%, that probably would not have that meaningful. That would be something that you could work around, and it wouldn't really, as long as you could remember what was happening day to day
Mm.
and keep notes, it wouldn't hurt that much. So it depends on. I think there's some impediments that are too much, but
Mm.
it would have to be like something like, let's say, you can't focus at all, um,
Gotcha. Yeah.
or you're blind. Although blindness, maybe not that bad. So that would be, I would be more on the fence of that. I would be willing to accept a pretty major detriment. Although I don't think that that from what I've seen, just on an anecdotal side, I don't think anybody who has been vegan for that long, if they have had health detriments, they're not to that degree.
Gotcha.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
we don't necessarily know if they're optimally healthy, or if they're healthier or less healthy than other people, but I
Hmm.
haven't seen health detriments to a disability level.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I remember there was one thing that Alex O'Connor asked Earthling Ed, which was if going vegan made you go from 6 feet tall to 3 feet tall, where to keep your 6 feet tall status, you would have to eat like one fish a month or something like that. Would you sacrifice your height and be 3 feet tall, or would you eat one fish a month to be 6 feet tall?
Um, I think, well, there is a nuance in that you could maybe say for Earthling Ed that being taller would help him with his activism.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
But if you said that it was unrelated to any effectiveness in advocating for veganism, I think he may do it, but I haven't seen the video. But I'm not sure. I think that would be at a level where you can't reasonably expect someone else to do that and make that
Yeah.
decision to not eat the fish.
Yeah, and I think so too, for sure. All right. Okay. What was the next part of the slide?
Um, just some stuff about um trying to think of the. I'm just trying to say that even though veganism isn't about convenience, it's still important to think about the convenience side of veganism.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
Um, and then this is one thing that I thought was important. Um, you've talked a lot about this, the perception of vegans. Um, so I think it is important to. I don't like the word carnist
Mm-hmm.
because I think it kind of leads to this like black and white mindset where it's like you're either completely evil or not. Um, it it poisons interactions with people who consume animal products because and they might think this anyway. I'm not saying that you not thinking of them as a bad person will make them think that, but you have to treat it as though they may have some sympathy for the issues that you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Any element of making this is kind of what I try to say to explain it to people is when it's legal and they can do it and they don't have to stop. The only thing that can possibly stand in the way of them eating meat is somebody convincing them not to. So, not kind of like you were explaining, like you can't please everyone. There's going to be people that are just going to be jerks and negative towards vegans no matter what happens. So, I'm not saying that you have to do something to magically make those people like view you in a certain way. But what you do have to think about is if there is ever a case where the person you're talking to might be convinced more so to not become vegan because the way you're talking, then in a sense you're the cause of that. Like, obviously you don't have to talk in the first place. Therefore, um, it's better that you're talking than you're not talking. Well, in some cases, actually, in a lot of cases, it's probably worse if somebody is talking and they make people think negative about vegans. But yeah, so if you make that person walk away from that interaction thinking, "Ugh, I don't like vegans," then that means when they're going to encounter another vegan, like I'm guessing most people when they talk to Earthling Ed, they leave going, "Oh man, I always thought vegans were jerks, but that guy was really nice." And then maybe in the future, when they come across another vegan, they're going to think fondly about like Earthling Ed or something, and then it'll make them more receptive to what they're hearing from the next vegan. But if they walk away talking to a negative vegan, um, then when they're talking to their friends and they're like, "Oh man, yeah, I hate vegans. Vegans suck." Even if they're a person that normally would be pretty open to hearing ideas, they just aren't vegan yet. I'm just guessing that there are lots. I don't know how many. I don't know if it's in the thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions. There are probably tons of people out there that would be vegan already if they did not experience the negative vegan.
Yeah, and I think some of it's about tribal thinking. If people perceive vegans as like you're an opposing tribe, they won't want to do it, even if that like there are some people who, I'm not sure how honest this is, but they're like, oh well, vegans are right, but I wouldn't want to be one of them.
Mm-hmm. Even if they don't want to, just by association, just by label.
Yeah.
Real quick, I want to read. Allison says, "Why so many hypotheticals?" Yeah, I get it. A lot of people don't like hypotheticals, and it's fine. I don't think people need to like hypotheticals, and I think she's referring to the whole 3 foot thing. The reason for something like that is it tests your limits. It tests why you're doing something and how far you'd go for something, because I think it's just really important to know why you do something. Like for example, if somebody didn't know what sentience was, but they didn't want to eat animals because when they see cows they're cute, then if somebody said like, why should somebody not eat animals? And if you don't have an answer, then you want to figure it out. You want to think about it. And so even though that wouldn't even be a hypothetical, that would just be you learning something. Hypotheticals help us learn as well because it helps us like dig kind of deeper and get to an understanding. I think there's something valuable to know about it. I would not sacrifice 3 feet just to help animals. I don't think it sounds horrible, but in the world I'm in and this one life, if I had to eat one fish a month to keep my height, I'm near 6 foot, and if I was going to drop to 3 feet, I think I would eat a fish a month. And it's a bummer. I think we need to be honest, and I'm being honest. But the reason it's good to point that kind of thing out is probably the biggest challenge us vegans face when talking to non-vegans is this concern about health. And so if we're honest with ourselves about like how much health we'd risk and this and that and the other, then when we're talking to people, it wouldn't be as simple as when they say, I don't know if I can be healthy being vegan, that you'd say, well, even if you couldn't be healthy being vegan, you should still be it. They're going to go, oh, wow, you're crazy. I'm out of here. Luckily, we can point to studies and point to various associations that are well known that recommend the vegan diet. But if we had to challenge the idea of health, it would just be a downside for a lot of people.
Yeah, and so I also had interacting with non-vegans is the most important thing that you can do, but you can't go into those interactions thinking that way. So
Hmm.
veganism doesn't have really a chance at the popularity level it is right now. It doesn't have a chance of spreading um, just by people seeing social media stuff. It has to be in person with people that a non-vegan has to connect with someone who is vegan and identify with that. That's, I think, the most likely way that someone else would become vegan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and then also, so in the truthful part, I wanted to mention. So I watched Seaspiracy with a group of non-vegans. It was like a public screening, so I saw their reactions to the film, which was to me was more interesting than the film itself. Um, I won't like spoil the whole thing, but the beginning talks about all this stuff about how fishing is like it's so bad for the environment and it's like climate change and all this and all the fish are going to be gone. But then at the end, like the last 10 or 20 minutes, then they're like, well, is this the right question? Should we actually be even eating fish if they feel more pain than even any land animals? And so they go into the ethical thing. Now, if the filmmaker, I believe, I could be wrong, is Kip Anderson, he's already been an ethical vegan for a while now. So I thought that way of portraying the message was dishonest because he was trying to bring in like environment. No, you have to worry about climate change is going to crumble human society, but then in the end, he kind of shows the reason that he cares about it is because it's wrong for the fish, which I think when I was looking at the expressions of the other people watching it, they were like, they kind of disapproved of they of the whole thing after that ethical message. They were like, oh, it's just, they just told me all this fake environment stuff so that
Mm.
they would get me because they don't want anyone to eat fish. and and I think it does, people who are in the conspiracy mindsets about that, they're doing veganism to, I don't know, like
Yeah.
something like castrate
No.
the population. that
Right.
that digs further into that when they have these things where, and it's the same with what the health, they kind of lead with a health message, but all the people saying that and all the people doing that, they all are ethical vegans if you actually like ask them.
Yeah.
There's
Well, and
nobody
Game
there that's like,
Changers, I think Game Changers, which I watched for the first time a week or so ago, which I thought was a good film, but it did the same thing where the majority of it was about fitness and showing how fit you can be while being vegan, and it focused on health and studies and whatnot. But then, like right at the end, for like a 5 minute chunk toward the last quarter of it, there was just this whole, I don't know, this outdoorsy guy with a backpack on, just talking about empathy. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was like he was with rhinos or something, or elephants, and it just got into this other message. And I think that's a good point, that that those messages should kind of be separate from each other. I actually personally hate that. That environmental, like climate change type stuff, gets brought into the vegan conversation, because to me it's so much more of an ethical conversation.
yeah. And also I think even the people who advocate that veganism can be healthy and they're showing like as many studies as possible, I don't think any of them could legitimately argue why a diet with like 5% animal product calories from animal products would be less healthful than a diet with 0%.
Yeah, but if you could convince, if we had studies that showed that it was equally healthy to be, let's say it was equally healthy to be um, plant based, equally healthy to be omnivore, and equally healthy to be carnivore. Somehow, humans, as long as you don't have like processed junk food and you don't have like hormones added to stuff, let's say that we could look at studies and find out that all three of those would be equally healthy. I would say at that point, it would still be reasonable to call it a moral obligation to be plant based. Where it becomes less of a moral obligation, in my mind, would be if the omnivore or carnivore version could show higher health benefits.
Yeah, but that's not. I agree with that, but that's not what. If you look at like it's like a lot of it, it's called like they call it like whole food plant based, and they're arguing for um, excluding all animal products for optimal health. That's not what they're arguing. Something that I think is false, that elimination of animal products from the diet will make you healthier.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I hate when people are dishonest about it, and in some cases they might just not know. But I don't know.
I
I mean,
I
it's
I,
possible.
I personally think that at least I think some of them do know better,
Yeah, no, oh, no, that's true,
and
and
it's
and I
just
and I think
like
it's.
they just want to. It's like it's your thing about um, like getting people to just not eat animal products for whatever reason.
Mhm.
It's similar to that, but I don't like it because it's not honest. And I
Yeah.
think that if you listen to which if you listen to what ex vegans say, some of them do say, "Oh, I felt like I was lied to about the health part."
Oh,
So
gotcha.
there could be a rebound, and also just a general disrespect of the ethics, because if the health and environment aspects are pushed front and center, or even being a part of it, besides sufficient health and sufficient environment.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, we being truthful is definitely the best route to go.
And then I have one more slide, but obviously there's a ton of stuff in the comments and everything that we could also talk about.
Oh yeah, it's all right. Well, I am curious before going to a different slide. It says healthy here. It says you cannot advocate for the best for veganism if you don't look healthy. I think that's a great point you make here. Now, various different people have various different looks, and so I think there's a range of health. Where you don't have to look like John Venus, who's not vegan anymore, or Vegan Gains. You don't have to be the fittest person out there. But I do think, well, I don't think you have to do anything. But I would say that if the biggest counter people have is to say, oh, I don't know if I want to be vegan because I want to be healthy, and I don't know if you can be healthy on a vegan diet. If the vegan they're talking to is like 100 pounds overweight or a couple 100 pounds overweight, it doesn't mean that overweight vegans shouldn't be activists, maybe.
There's forms of activism that don't require showing your face.
Yeah. Well,
And
and even
I
myself,
also
like,
don't.
I was just gonna say, like I probably, like in all honesty, could probably lose like 50 pounds. I when it comes to talking about ethics, the weight really doesn't matter at all. I think it's more beneficial for the movement if you are healthier, especially if you're going to talk about the health side of it. But if you're just talking about the ethics side, and therefore you can talk about a wide variety of elements of veganism, then it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I don't know exactly. Like, luckily, I don't like. I personally feel pretty healthy. I've felt pretty healthy off and on since being vegan, and especially when I eat healthier. And so I don't feel like I'm an example of what I would point out as somebody that looks like they wouldn't be able to represent veganism well. But I think it's definitely worth thinking about for people out there.
Yeah, I was also, in some ways, I wasn't talking about weight. More, some of it more like, and it's not necessarily the best measure of anything. It's just what people perceive, but like, um, kind of skin complexion and skin clarity,
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's a
red
wide range. Like,
redness
yeah.
that's perceived, and some of the biological cues that are ingrained to be perceived as healthy actually are healthier. Some of them aren't, or it's dependent on ethnicity, and so there's a lot of factors with that it's not necessarily scientific, but
Hmm.
that's how people perceive you
Yeah.
in terms of healthy. And I would say probably, I think there's more of a problem with vegans being underweight for activism, at least perceived as underweight by first world country standards, because
Hmm.
if they're
Yeah,
not muscular.
I haven't noticed that. I feel like, from my perception, it seems like vegans are more often overweight. But yeah, maybe some are underweight, and I feel at least with underweight, some people just are at a weight where it's hard for them to get to a higher weight. Um, where at least looking at it from what would be enticing to people, not that we want to entice people to try to be underweight or anything, but I think the bigger concern would be if somebody was thinking about doing it for their health, if they saw somebody that was like 200 pounds overweight, eating like vegan donuts and vegan Impossible burgers and whatnot, which I love those things, or at least I used to. I'm trying to stay away from those things. But if they saw that happening, they probably might go like, "Oh man, like I was only thinking about it for health, so I don't know if I want to do it." So I think that's a bigger concern. But yeah, if somebody's like super scrawny and looks unhealthy and that underweight. That's an issue too. I guess I just don't have much experience with that, and I wouldn't know exactly what to say to encourage somebody to get to a good weight. So
Yeah, I mean, I think there's other places that that's just not a topic for this stream.
yeah.
But just just wanted to say that it should be something that's considered.
Hmm.
Okay, so
Oh wait, can you go
go
back one
back.
real quick? I just noticed something. So interacting with non-vegans is perhaps the most important thing you can do. You cannot go into interactions thinking this way. Oh, okay, interesting. Because when I read that first part, with who is perhaps, I do think it's one of the most important things you can do. So conversations in general. But then it says you can't go into interactions thinking this way. So what do you mean by that?
So I mean, like, if you're just kind of, if you're like, oh, I'm just gonna try to meet more. I'm gonna try to, whenever I'm talking to someone, I'm gonna always be thinking. I mean, obviously, if you're friends with someone, then it's something that you can bring up, but
Mm-hmm.
you can't be, if that's your, it's kind of like one of those things where if you consciously think about all the time when you're with them, oh, how do I be the best activist, then you're actually probably going to not, ironically, you're going to be a worse activist.
Okay, interesting.
And that kind of ties into what's on the next slide, that about the slow pace of societal change.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and a question I have that I don't have an answer to is, like, how do people cope with that
Yeah.
emotionally? Because it's not exactly dishonesty, but I think if you look at enough of the vegan media and discourse, there's you'd almost think, if you didn't have any, like, outside sources, you'd think, oh, in 10 years, everything, there's going to be no more animal abuse.
Yeah.
By the pace
Yeah.
of everything they're talking, it's just so unrealistic.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I don't know what to say about it. I don't like I feel like I've felt different over the years. So I'm 37 now. So that kind of thing was more bothersome to me years ago. Where now I just kind of accept that there's a lot of things that I'd love to change. And like we were talking about earlier, I mean there's slavery all over the world. There's there's female genital mutilation in all over the world. There's many issues in many countries, and even in the country I'm in, I could list a couple dozen things that I think are devastating and huge changes that need to happen. I don't even know if I think veganism is the most important, but it's right up there. It's probably one of the most important. It probably is the most important actually. But I guess I'm just at a point where, like, so for me, I just accept that there are bad things in the world. The best I can do is whatever I think would be the best. And then also just having good conversations with people, trying to hear other ideas, like honestly listening and accepting other ideas and accepting that I could be wrong about things and hear ideas and hope for the best. But I don't know if there's any like what I would say about the idea of it being hard to deal with, that an idea of thinking it won't change much.
yeah, I guess I'm talking more from, well, a lot of people who become vegan are young, so if you're thinking of it from a younger person's perspective, um, then it is it is, I do think, at least a problem with the vegan communication on the whole thing, that acting like everything's going to change immediately.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Um, so are you want to move to the next point, or do you have other stuff?
Yeah, no, that sounds good. And I'm also going to respond to something in chat real quick. RC, I've noticed this a couple times. I would just say let's leave anything sexual and what what seems obvious to me as inappropriate out of the chat. I'm mostly just pointing this out because like I like I've liked talking to you and I think you're anyways, I just let's leave that stuff out of the chat. But as for the fact that I'm 37 and you're curious how I have kids that have moved out of the house and you're wondering if I got somebody pregnant at 16, I will clear up this number misunderstanding. So yes, I'm 37. I have 4 kids. My oldest kid is 24. The one that's moved out of the house is 19. I also have a 13-year-old and a 6-year-old that I call 7 on stream a lot for some reason because I forget her age. But my wife had 3 kids before I met her, and so yeah, I was only 13 when my oldest kid was born, but my wife was a little older than that. So, anyways, yeah, and no worries about the other thing. Um, he wants to remove sentience entirely, all sentience. Wait, what's that? Um, uh, my buddy Akash in here says he wants to remove
Uh,
sentience entirely? Question mark.
I
Was
think
that?
I
Oh,
think
that's
you
on
might
this
be
slide.
reading the thing on the slide. But that's not what I was really getting at.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
I
Go
should
ahead.
probably
You can
explain
answer
it
that
because
question.
I
Yeah.
wrote this out like in 10 minutes. So this whole thing. So this was just the point that just from a pure biological perspective, so trophic levels, um, farming with beings that have to have sentience takes more energy and more input because you need fuel for the brain and the nerves. So just purely from a cost efficiency standpoint, something like lab grown meat action and the plant based meats are are in the interest of the money making powers. So I put that here because it's just something that can maybe give people a little bit of hope that even if everyone is like morally everyone's morally corrupt and no and most people in the world don't care, that's just a little bit of hope.
Gotcha. Yeah. No,
That
I completely agree.
our
I
food
think I think lab grown meat will be what makes the world go vegan. Now, I don't know what will make it illegal to eat animal products at some point. That seems so far down the road to me. But I think in our lifetime, we will see it become so popular that at least like 60 to 70, 75% of people in first world countries will be vegan dietarily. Once lab grown meat takes over, especially when it's shown that it's perfectly fine and healthy to eat, at least like compared to other things. Your average person eats fast food and a bunch of garbage. Like more than 80% of people in the US are overweight. Not that I want this to be the case, but when people are worried that people won't eat lab grown meat because they're worried about like health stuff, as long as it's just as healthy as all the other processed garbage that we have, I think people will not be able to like. It'll become so frowned upon by your average human that like this lab grown meat exists, but you're still killing animals. Like anyways, I think the world is going to change in a huge way. I hope for a future of healthy humans, which is not a vegan conversation, so we don't need to get too far into that.
yeah
On the ethics side, and I don't care what if people want to harm themselves with unhealthy food. So if whatever amounts of foods that are made with this lab grown meat or the types of foods like making like lab grown meat but making processed like hot dogs or chicken nuggets or whatever, um, like I guess I don't care if people want to get unhealthy if they're not harming animals. And lab grown meat will probably be more ethical than even healthy produce.
Yeah. Um, should I have some ideas on the downsides of lab grown meat, but I kind of like ending it on or having this stop at a more positive note.
Yeah, for
So
sure. Talk about whatever
so
you want.
I'm kind of reluctant to bring that up because
Uh, yeah, you
I
can
don't think
save it
there's
for a
any.
different talk if you want. Either way, did you want to keep talking a little longer, or you?
Yeah, I'm willing to talk about the stuff on here or some comments. I have time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's go another 10 or 15 minutes or so. Yeah. What are your thoughts? Do you see a comment you want to respond to, or did you have a question for me or anything?
There was a comment it was pretty far up. It was just about calling all of this a cult.
Hmm.
That I think the fact that we're having this conversation right here proves that it's not a cult.
Yeah, I think people loosely use silly terms, and I wish they would not.
And that and the term cult, it's harmful to use it in this context, especially because there are people who have escaped real cults that were much worse.
Yeah.
Or I
Yeah.
shouldn't say much worse makes this bad by implication, but
Right. Yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah, no, it's weird. And that's kind of the problem with words is when people are just, I don't know if it was a troll or whatnot, whoever said it, but people just throw around words in silly ways. And I just wish people were more interested in having conversations. And then when it comes to using a word, you just want to make sure that everybody involved knows what you mean by it, because different people can mean different things. Somebody was telling me they thought they viewed veganism as a religion the other day. It was similar to cult, a little less crazy of a word, but
I don't think that characterization is crazy at all.
yeah.
Because
Well,
if you're just doing it as a moral system,
yeah, yeah. Well, they were meaning it in a negative way, but yeah, if you just mean it in calling it a moral system, I mean, I guess you could use religion synonymously with philosophy if you want. I mean, I personally don't like the idea of it because religion's usually so connected to the idea of there being a deity. But yeah, that's the thing with words. As long as the people involved that are talking know what each other are talking about, that's kind of all that matters.
yeah. And I have um I think this would probably take too long for today. Um should I go back through the slides just see if there's anything?
Somebody in the comments wanted to see a certain slide, so I was just going to leave it on this one just for a sec.
Okay.
Um, was there anything on this one that we actually didn't get into?
I don't think we didn't really talk about diversity.
Yeah, what are your thought? Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, that's just like um you kind of need to just any thoughts that people have about a vegan being a certain type of person um is wrong because there's pretty much people from every walk of life, every ethnicity. There's fat people, skinny people, muscular people. There, there are all those different types of people within the movement, but there still is the perception from a lot of people that it's a very specific group.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. Like most things come across a certain way, and once you have larger numbers for any kind of a group, people are going to lump together what seems to be the averages. Like I think maybe like 70 to 80% of vegans happen to be female. And then I'm guessing it's like 70 to 80% are probably more like left leaning. And yeah, there's all these different things, but I think it's best to not connect these things. I mean, you can connect the claims of veganism, like you could connect veganism with empathy or with morals, because that's the type of philosophy it is. But yeah, to like lump it together, like bringing politics into it, and like treating it as if only like one political like type of person could be under it. I'm definitely not a fan of that. Um,
Yeah, I was only saying that to the point of that you don't want anyone to feel like, oh well, I'm maybe like I'm poor, so I can't afford to be vegan, or I'm fat,
mhm.
so I'm like not I wouldn't get accepted, or or someone who's a bodybuilder and they don't want to do it because they're not going to be able to build muscle.
Yeah. Well, I
Mhm.
think even to a further level, and I put out a video about this today. I would say what we also don't want to push out is, even if we don't want to lump them into the same label, we don't want to push out people that aren't vegan that are interested um, in the movement. Like if somebody says like, "Oh, I'm a vegan except for I eat like fish and honey," then like I get why people would maybe not view them vegan themselves. But if that person wanted to talk about like changes they want made, and they like the idea of advocating for not eating dairy and eggs and other meats and whatnot. I feel like veganism, and maybe this is the part that comes across to people like it's a cult. I feel like veganism kind of has this idea of this all or nothing. You can't sit with us if you don't do exactly what we do. And I don't know exactly how we should fit these kind of people into our group. But if there was kind of like this, like our group was accepting of all people that want to be part of extending moral consideration to animals, then I think we just have a way bigger movement and a less judgmental one, I guess.
Yeah, I mean I think it's you have to be tactful, but there are ways to advocate for reduction without advocating for reduction as an end. So like the stuff the like the challenges where it's like, oh, you're gonna do it for 30 days, not eat plant based, and then that might that might not get people the full way, but it'll at least I do think it helps to some degree just getting them to envision how it would be to live as a vegan.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. 100%. Yeah. Well, and then not only that, like imagine if somebody was in chat right now and came in and said like, "Oh, I recently became vegan, but I decided I'm still gonna eat fish and eggs, but I'm cutting everything else out." Imagine the difference between saying like, "Oh, good job with all the stuff you cut out. It'll be cool if you cut out fish someday or something." You have that response, or imagine the vegans that go on there just saying, "Fish suffer, so if you still eat fish, you're not a vegan, and you're still a carnist. You might think you're doing good, but you're still a carnist." Um, and that's kind of what I think we need to get away from. And I know many vegans that actually are pretty darn nice usually, but when it comes to something like that, that's the type of comment they would have. And I wish the community was better. And when I say community, I just mean all vegans that are willing to talk or type. I wish a lot less of them would have comments like that, because it's not a good look when you have people that are trying and doing at least what they perceive as their best.
The one thing that I would say, even though I probably generally agree with that point,
Mhm.
I would say there definitely are some people. It would be like the type of people who would be vegan gains fans that
Mm.
he made them go vegan because they might have seen, and it depends on the person. They might have seen someone like Earthling Ed, and they're kind of like, "Oh, that's like maybe a nice idea. I'll think about that." But when they see someone advocating it for it more forcefully, then they take it more seriously. If that is what they would do, being in that situation of advocating for something.
Yeah, I mean it's a fair point because anything could be possible. I would guess that would have to be a very slim number of humans that would react that way, but that's just from that just seeming logical to me. I don't have like the numbers to bear that out, but yeah, I think
Yeah, it's hard to get actual quantities in this situation. I mean, I think the only thing that anyone can actually do about it is just, in some ways, just appreciate the variation of different types of activism that we have,
yeah,
and they complement each other in a way, because the more, I mean, they're not really more extreme, but the the more aggressive ones make people like Earthling Ed look super reasonable to a lot of people.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, and there's gonna be a fine line, and well, and in a sense, I don't even know if there is a line. It's just doing something unnecessary. So as long as you're telling the truth, you could be like, I see the value in having somebody like Vegan Gains just saying, um I don't know, just whatever extreme version of something there is, you can say. But the problem comes in when the thing you say cannot have a benefit. Like it's just like, let's say for example, it's a negative tone, like a tone that would not help the situation. Then you doing it, sure, it might make other vegans like laugh and go like, "Oh yeah, you get them," make fun of that carnist. But if you're truly wanting to impress upon the person you're talking to and anybody that watches, I would say there's a handful of things that you can do that that have an extreme negative effect.
Yeah, and if we're also relating it back a little bit to the Joey Carbstrong thing, which I know I said, I told you before this, I didn't want to talk about it, but
Mm-hmm.
um, there is a difference between social media activism and interpersonal activism. You can't
Mm.
you can't like make someone that you're interacting with think that you think they're a bad person, really, I think.
Say that again.
That I think, this is only my opinion, with more interpersonal activism, you have to make the other person think, "Oh, I am a good person, so I should
Mm.
either reduce or stop consuming
Yeah,
these
yeah,
things."
definitely. Yeah, and I think you're right
Rather
that it
than, "Oh,
depends.
because I don't, because of these actions, I'm not a good person," and they're trying to tell me I'm not a good person.
Yeah, no, no, that's a great point. Yeah, and I think it changes depending on, yeah, if it's just a regular conversation versus something filmed for the internet, and also it changes if it's like technically a debate or not. But yeah, no, I think that's a good point. Understanding how humans work and trying to, because that's the point. If we want people to be empathetic and recognize this thing and change their ways, then even though it might be a lot of work for us, it's kind of what we got to do. Like it's kind of the entire point. Allison here says, we really need to be communication experts. And there's an LOL, so I don't know if that makes the claim sarcastic, but anyways, yes, I think the best thing we can do for the animals is to become communication experts. You don't owe the world anything. You don't have to be the best expert in the world. You don't have to go to college for speech or anything. But yeah, working towards that is great. Akash says to me, "How about glad you are feeling better? What can what can you let's see, what can you do better next time?" And that's a recommendation for what to say to the person that came in chat saying, "I eat fish, but otherwise I'm vegan." Um, yeah, any variation that isn't like an unnecessary negative thing. I notice that with a lot of people. I'll see somebody say like, "Oh, I'm vegan, but I eat honey," or "I recently started being vegan, but I'm unsure about cutting this thing out." Like we again, we got to realize most people eat animal products, and so the people that are eating some animal products but mostly cutting the rest out, we got to recognize that if they're on the fence and they're thinking that maybe it's actually okay to eat animal products, but maybe they want to get into veganism, then there's a huge chance that how we react to them will make them go away. It'll make them go, nope, I'm back to eating animal products. These guys are douchey. I want out. And so it matters. But yeah, I do agree that that it could be good wording to say something like, "I'm glad you're feeling better. What can you do better next time?" Just be careful. Tread lightly. Because if you keep them part of the community and part involved with wanting to talk to other vegans, as long as everybody's nice and treads lightly, then yeah, it'll probably work out all right. Allison said, "Sorry, I am being serious. As vegan activists, advocates, we have to be well versed in communication." Yeah, cool. Let's see.
I would take probably an even less extreme. If it was more interpersonal, I would take an even less extreme comment than Akash. More like, oh, well, if you want to reduce your reduce or eliminate fish consumption, I can help you with that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Not
So,
even implying that they're necessarily bad for doing it, even if that's
oh, I see. Because he said, "What can you do better next time?" Yeah, because what can you do better next time is better than you're doing bad now. But it does have the element of, if there is a better, then what you're doing now is bad, where the help you with it is more friendly. That's interesting, and that's why it's good to have conversations like this, because I wouldn't have even thought of that. I mean, unless I made myself sit down to think about it.
I'm just looking through if there's any comments to bounce off of. I definitely have other things to talk about, but I don't think today it would be like a whole nother hour to get into them.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, no,
So,
this has been a good talk. This might be a good point to stop. I've noticed my buddy Jeremy here happens to hop in right at the end of live streams. And so I always got to hop off here right when he hops in. But yeah, I think this is a good point to stop. This has been a really good talk. And yeah, if you ever have any ideas of things you want to talk about, just send me an email and we'll set up a good time to talk.
okay, thanks.
All right. Take care. Okay, so I'm still here. Hey, Jeremy. I only have like 20 minutes, and last time I said this, we ended up talking for like over an hour. But I wanted to ask you a question about utilitarianism. My 2-year near weekly online D&D campaign ended at 8 a.m. Oh, I see. Oh yeah, and I forgot you're back in the States and you're not in Korea right now. But hey, Jeremy, if I send you an invite, will you hop on here so I can ask you a question? I naturally just wake up at 1:30. Gotcha. I have a way different sleeping pattern than you. I need to go to bed early and get up early. But I'm gonna put this in the comments here. And sure, okay, cool. Anybody listening still? Jeremy, if you're not familiar with him, he's a vegan, awesome guy that myself and a bunch of other vegans on YouTube talk to. The talk, I'm going to ask him some questions about utilitarianism. And so it's not exactly veganism, but it's connected. So anyways, if anybody wants to keep listening to that, go for it. But mostly I just want to challenge. I just don't get the idea of this utilitarian business, aside from like loose ideas of it. But on the whole, I don't. So I'm going to challenge this guy. Triangle says you should really set up a Discord server. Conversing through YouTube chat or comment is tedious. Yeah, so with Discord, is the chat easier? But my main issue with Discord is I have an external mic that or not mic, sorry, webcam that plugs into to my laptop, and then it's on top of the. Anyways, it's a somewhat nice webcam. And when I've tried to set up Discord, it doesn't work. And I didn't want to record on Discord for YouTube using just like the standard little webcam thing here. So anyways, hopefully I can have somebody try to walk me through setting up Discord. And that'd be cool, because I've been in the talks with Dr. Avi about having a few conversations on some topics that he's had with vegan gains. I really want to talk Avi out of predator culling, and I also think he has a few kind of silly ideas on some crop death stuff. So, anyways, he only does Discord talk, so I do need to get on there. Okay, Jeremy, how you doing? Oh, I can't hear you. No volume. Also, for anybody listening, this Saturday, 8 I think it's 8 a.m. PST, I'll be talking with Akash, and we'll be doing something slightly different. It'll be on abortion. And for my live streams, I'm going to be having various different conversations on philosophy and political things like abortion. But I'm only going to my videos, my main videos and my shorts will only be vegan related, but the live streams I'm going to branch off to some other stuff. So if you don't want to get offended by abortion stuff, don't watch that. But me and Akash are both vegan, and we have very differing opinions on abortion. So try to check that one out.
I think I do too for most people as well.
Oh, gotcha.
You
Yeah.
can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
I don't know how many people out there are very strongly politically pro-choice, but quite strongly morally against most abortions.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, no, we'll definitely have to have a talk
I
on
wish
that.
there were more people who had that sane, mature opinion that even things that are very morally wrong should be handled by moral persuasion and intellectual persuasion rather than seizing the power of government. But there don't seem to be too many people in that what used to be the old libertarian position, and now seems like a lot more people calling themselves libertarian are on the use government to try to criminalize abortions side.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that at some point.
Yeah,
I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. Okay, so here, I want you to convince me of this utilitarian nonsense I keep hearing from you and Jerem. But okay, and this
a revolution.
this benefit of pleasure that you talk about. Okay, so let's take this to scale. Okay, so I don't know what scale I'm talking about. We're not taking anything to scale. But let's say right now there was an island and nobody lives on that island, and there's all kinds of food on the island for people to eat, but nobody lives there. And if I just took, if I magically made 10 people exist, so I just press a button and all of a sudden there's a mom and a dad, and they have 8 kids. That's a wild amount of kids. But anyway, so there's 10 people. And the kids are growing up on this island. The fact that I'm making them magically exist does not have any negative effect on their lives or anything. But they did not exist. And so there was that. But now they exist, and they're experiencing pleasure. Everything's good, but they're isolated to this island. How does them existing and them having pleasure have any calculation or effect on anybody else that in this hypothetical they will never interact with and never have an actual effect on anyone else?
Okay, I think given the phrasing of your question, I think there's a straightforward way to answer it.
Okay. Well, am I understanding utilitarianism correctly?
So I would say, I mean, there's the question of what the moral truth about the universe would be from that change, and then there's the question of how we would know that moral truth. And it seems, given the terms of your problem, you and I wouldn't have any way of knowing that the world was made a better place by the creation of this family. Your problem, your thought experiment specifies that we wouldn't know about them. They wouldn't have interacted with us, just like people on a distant planet across the galaxy. So yeah, we wouldn't know the truth, but there's all kinds of non-moral truths that we don't have any way of knowing, about tiny details about some planet in a different galaxy. So there are things that are true of those planets in distant galaxies, regardless of the fact that we have no way of knowing their
Yeah.
truth status, right? And so I think that would be that's what I would say, is that it's still morally true that the universe is made a better place by the creation of this family with overall positive utility. You and I can't know about it. So then the question is, when I say some change would be normatively good or normatively bad, it's a kind of factual statement about the universe that doesn't require you and I to be affected by it, or you and I to have any means of knowing.
Are you making tea right now?
Yeah, you can hear that. Okay.
Yeah, you should get that. Let's see. I just realized tea time. Oh yeah, Angelo, how you doing? Oh yeah, we have a talk coming up too, don't we? Be doing my follow-up debate with Angelo on. That's gonna be this Sunday, 11 a.m. PST. All right. The question is, what tea do we have? Hey. I'm going to guess oolong. Is it oolong tea?
No. This is a kind of
Is it matcha?
It's a kind of herbal tea with caffeine that my sister has.
Oh. That's a funny type of tea there.
It's not actually. I just grabbed it pretty quick. I'm normally a coffee drinker, but didn't have time to make coffee in the normal way.
Okay, well, let me respond to the last thing you said before the tea situation, because I might just not fully understand utilitarianism.
Well, that's like the essence of the problem. I mean, that's the essence of the issue, right there. So,
okay, so
it applies to all morality.
If we just took the truths we don't know and we understood how much pleasure there is, how much suffering there is, and we did the math, and creating these 10 people that go on the island makes the total math more pleasure. I agree with you that the math would be what the math is. The facts just are the facts. Overall, there's more pleasure, so good stuff. My question is, do we think there is any actual moral benefit at all to just because those numbers are going up? So these 10 people would not have existed. They didn't ask to exist. I mean, nobody asked to exist, but if once we exist, we exist. And I see the want for pleasure once you exist. But if these 10 people did not ask to exist, I make them exist, and they experience more pleasure than pain, so their lives are overall good. We can even call their lives great. Is it better that, aside from to each other on the island, is it better that they existed than if they didn't exist?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That goes to the crux of the matter, that better is ultimately a property of the universe. Better in the sense that you're asking about right now. I'm holding to be a property of the universe that's sort of a measurement of the overall net utility in the universe, kind of like a measure of the amount of energy in the universe or something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
So it doesn't have to be a property of you or me. That doesn't have to be that property gets changed in order for this property of the universe, which is being a normatively better or normatively worse universe than it was before, or one state of the universe compared to another state of the universe, in terms of this measure, which is aggregate utility. And it's not only, I don't think it's only pleasure. That's a major disagreement across consequentialists. I think, there are positively good states of sentient beings that are not probably not something we would describe as pleasure, but they're positive.
Fair enough.
And
Okay,
then there are negative states that we wouldn't call pain, but they're different kinds of negative states. But
gotcha.
so it's overall positive sentient experience that's a property of the universe, I believe.
Okay, so that statement could be made, but you wouldn't necessarily say that I did a good act by pressing that button and making them exist.
Why not?
Oh, well, I don't know. So you would.
I mean, I guess good could be ambiguous here. I would say you made the world a better place, and that's what moral rightness is. Assuming that you didn't have other buttons or something that would make the world an even better place.
But
for sentient
why
beings.
does it matter if the world's a better place?
Well, whether
Just
it
off
matters,
of those numbers, like why does it matter? Why would it matter to you? Why would you be in more favor of me making those 10 people exist
Well,
than
it might not.
making them exist?
It might not, because that's a psychological question. Whether I want to make the world a better place, which is equivalent to the question of whether I want to be a better person or not, a morally better person or not. The question of whether I would want to do it is about what kind of ways that Jeremy could be more moral Jeremy cares about. That's a psychological question about Jeremy. But the question about moral rightness or wrongness, it can be independent of that. Just exactly like there's things that I already know I could do to be more moral, but I psychologically don't want to do. Like give up all my hobbies and donate 90% of my income to charities.
Yeah. Fair enough. I guess I just feel like I want to be moral. I want to do the moral things that I am convinced subjectively are moral, but I also want to, if there's something that I could think is moral, I want to be convinced of it, and I cannot imagine creating 10 people that never existed. I couldn't imagine considering that a moral act or an immoral act. It just is an act, because they won't have any effect other than on the total universal calculation, and they don't, aside from how they affect each other, they don't affect anybody else. So I just don't see that. But also, while responding to that, Akash says, by what metrics is it better? And I don't know if he's asking me to ask you that or if he's asking me that, but I don't think it's better, so he must be asking me to ask you that.
Because Akash, are you asking for some other metric than aside from the net positive experiences in the universe being increased? Because that just is the metric. That's not gonna cash out in some other metric.
Needs to be described better, because it definitely doesn't affect the rest of the universe that you're talking about. So it's just the knowledge that it can exist in the universe.
Well, I mean, it's in the universe. It's just like if you ask me, like, there's a number of, I don't know, what do we want to say? There's a number of some molecule. There's a number of molecules of silicon dioxide or whatever in the universe, and if it was increased on one planet and not decreased on any other planet, then would that number go up? Yes, it would.
Yeah,
even if nobody on any other planet found out about that fact.
The number could go up. I just don't get why it would be viewed as it being, like, I get that it would be viewed as being a positive. Like, so if I was in this room and I never left this room, so I'd never affect anybody else, my pleasure going up would just be me experiencing more pleasure. So this is good. This is good that I experience more pleasure. Mm-hmm. It doesn't affect anybody else. And so the only thing that makes the world better is that somebody in the world experienced more pleasure. But then the question becomes, what if that person never existed? And then if the answer is making anything exist to add a higher number of pleasure,
is good.
I guess
for
there's
the
nothing
universe.
wrong with feel. Well, it's not good for the universe. It's good. It's good if what is good is seeing a higher number on a calculation.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you need to say for the universe, because I think you can just say
We can't say it's good because it's
is
only
good
good for the
simpliciter,
person that never
because
would have existed.
I don't. Okay, yeah. So this is a big sticking point that comes up.
Okay, good. I'm not the only
Especially
one.
it comes up. Well, no, it's. I don't think it's hard for us to reply to, but it especially comes up with the antinatalists, David
Okay.
Benatar's argument, and they seem to think that that positive experiences need to have some kind of conceptually pre-existing individual, that things can only be good for an individual that's already here, and so you can't say that the absence of some individual with a pleasurable or happy life is bad, because there wasn't ever the individual there. I think that's entirely backward, and I think that most kind of overall consequentialists have the same kind of idea that experiences are really the primary. Maybe they don't.
Experiences once you
Maybe they don't
exist,
have this
though.
kind of metaphysics, but yeah, experiences, subjective experiences, are the thing that makes up selves or persons. They're
Mhm.
not some kind of feeling that goes into a pre-existent self.
Mhm.
I would say the universe just has these subjective experiences. Many are neutral, some are positive, some are negative. And then what a self is like, this is kind of Derek Parfit's account in Reasons and Persons and his other works. This is a self is like enough overlapping, sort of causally connected strands of experiences. So selves are like this fuzzy. I mean, we can easily talk about them because some examples of them are clear, but they really are not precisely defined kind of segments of experiences that are connected in time or connected in some causal way and with each other, and then that's what makes what we should call a self or a person. And so so it makes perfect sense to say that the universe is improved by the overall balance of positive experiences to negative experiences increasing in the universe, even if you can't pin down the specific self or individual that was there before that those experiences are getting added to.
Interesting.
It's
Interesting.
a lot
Okay.
of talk when I'm so tired, but
No, you're good.
I'm
I have a
breaking
question
up.
for you, but I'm going to read this comment really quick just to see if it helps at all. So, Louis Miguel says to me, "I'm not a utilitarian," like referring to himself, with a pukey face, and then says, "But do the inverse hypothetical. Wouldn't you think it would be a worse universe if you created someone just to suffer? It's the same logic." Yeah, no, you shouldn't
To
create.
you, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
you shouldn't create someone just to suffer. That'd be horrible. But I'm pointing out that if you don't create somebody at all, whether they're going to suffer or not suffer, like I'm guessing in your mind, if you do not create somebody when you could create them, you are doing a worse thing. And
I think
and my
a
stance
better
would be that
example
you're
for
not.
Lewis there. Sorry.
Yeah, you're fine.
Since you talked about this island with these people who would never affect us, we would never find out about them. What about the thought experiment where people just appeared on this island and their lives were misery, but you and I would never know about it?
Yeah, like I wouldn't want to create other people to counteract their misery. I would just want their misery to not exist. But
Well,
maybe I didn't fully understand what you're saying.
I'm not sure. I mean, everything's a comparison, so I think there's a kind of like little sleight of mind in what you're saying there. Like you wouldn't want to create these people that are suffering and then create other people to counteract their misery, but
Mm-hmm.
contingent on the fact that the miserable people already exist and you can't do anything about them.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't want to then create a different group of people with overall positive experiences. Like, I don't
I
understand
wouldn't
what
want them
counteract
not
means.
to. I wouldn't want them not to exist, but yeah, just because the math will add up to the world having more like elements of pleasure and elements of similar things to pleasure. Yeah, I guess it's not necessarily counteracting because you can't help what already exists and that it's suffering unless you can help it. But I wouldn't do that as an act to counteract that. Sure, if somebody
Oh,
creates a new person, that's great. A new yeah, like if they create a person and that person has a good life, that's great. I just don't get the idea of intentionally creating a new person. Smexy Magician says 5,000 happy people is not better than 4,000 happy people.
4,000 unhappy people.
Um,
Well, see, I think
no,
that's
both
just the,
both both are happy.
5,000 is not better than 4,000 happy people.
Because
Okay.
each
So he
individual
wants
has
to be
their own
a
happy, so yeah.
wants to be an average kind of averaging kind of utilitarian,
Hmm.
that not an additive one. I think there are some logical arguments. I'm going to go check out Bentham's Bulldog blog
Hmm.
or the
I
Good
do,
Thoughts blog
yeah,
for
I do
the
need to
the
check that
kind of
out.
arguments against averaging consequentialism, because there are some sort of some logical chains of reasoning. Um, it's kind of good to see them spelled out as premises and conclusions, to see kind of why people would think there was a problem with that. But uh,
Um, really quick, I want to respond to this person that said, "Surely you would choose to save 10 random people instead of one, right?" Question mark.
that sounds like
Now,
it's to the other guy, right?
yeah, if it was a trolley car problem, no, I let the 10 die. But if I'm just told like, hey, you could save 1 or 10 and they're random, I save the 10. Yes, correct. But yeah, my follow up question to you, after asking that initial one I asked was, oh, where'd it go? I had a question. Oh yeah. Okay. So I get this idea within hypotheticals to say that actions that would increase utility are good. But since we cannot know if any individual being born, human or animal, is going to be a net positive, would you say that it's reasonable to say that you want more creatures, more beings to be born, or is it only within hypotheticals of knowing there's a likelihood of utility?
Um, I mean, it. I I I think, given what I think I literally heard you say that yeah, it's dependent upon the probability estimate, the sort of reasonable probability estimate with like sensible premises. You know, I said in my talk with Christina a while ago, yeah, you got to point out as a consequentialist that you need to have reasonable epistemological epistemology. You need to have reasonable factual views about the world. Otherwise, consequentialism will produce horrible results because it's poisoned by your factual premises. So, if you believe, for
Mm,
example, in the literal existence of a hell, like some forms of Christian or Islamic hell, then you're going to be doing calculations like, any amount of torture that I inflict on a person in this life to get them to convert and avoid hell is going to be worth it, because the consequence of avoiding, eternal unimaginable torture in a pit of fire that's a more important consequence than the torture that I inflicted on the person. So if you
mm,
have crazy factual beliefs, then it's going to make everything else. It's going to make all your consequential reasoning crazy. But
mm-hmm.
assuming that you don't, then yeah, your judgment of whether it's better or worse to bring a certain individual into the world has got to depend upon your rational irrational probabilities that you would assign to different kinds of life that they'd be likely to lead.
Yeah.
And I
yeah,
don't see
interesting.
that. I see that the key point is that I don't think there's any essential difference in doing that calculation about bringing a new person in the world versus when you do that calculation about, about what kind of energy production we should have, or what the speed limit should be on the roads, or what kind of food I should eat, what kind of clothing I should wear, or how I should spend my charity dollars. I think it's just the same concept, the same kind of calculation across the board, which is, it's all like probabilistic. I can't be certain about any of these things really. I can't be 100% certain, but I have to make, and I don't have time to calculate every detail before making a choice. I have to make choices quickly a lot of the time, and I think that the questions about what kind of life a potential being would be expected to have is, I don't see a fundamental difference from all those other kind of choices.
Gotcha. Interesting. Okay. Well, sorry to cut this one short, but I mostly just wanted you to hop on so I could ask that quick question, and I actually got to run to a thing. But I want to get you on another talk soon, so let's set something up, especially now that we're on the same time zone.
If you want me to debate an outright good, true, I'm not going to take very long here, but a true deontologist, then Lewis is a really good example. He actually understands deontology and he has the real position, I'm pretty sure.
Louis Ghetto,
because
okay.
A lot of the famous in our world advocates, YouTube and social media vegans are actually talking like consequentialists who think that the consequence to maximize is rights, is respecting rights, but that's not deontology. And so their mistake is that they don't actually know what position they're holding, Joey Carbstrong or George Martin or whatever. And in their case, I really like to explain to them what their view actually is philosophically. But when it comes to Lewis, he's actually said things in chat that show he really is at holding deontology. And so if you want to really get this hashed out, then
I don't know if you saw, but I put a comment in my community post today about the misunderstandings of the terms, and at least as far as it's understood amongst I'm not very well educated on the philosophical terms, but the people that will talk about deontology as if that needs to be fighting for animal liberation, but anything like welfare is just a utilitarian perspective. They're ignoring the fact that if they're referring to rule-based things, and therefore rule-based would be referring to saving the animals, you would also still have a rule-based idea of not harming the animals. Like everything that happens that welfare for animals would affect, like not cutting out pig teeth or pigtails, those are negative rights violations.
Yeah, I mean, so the key distinction though isn't about trying to minimize rights violations or trying to minimize suffering. That's a distinction within consequentialism, but that's not what deontology is. What deontology is the person who thinks about rights violations in terms of their own behavior. So the kind of vegan, for example, who only cares about themselves being as pure of a vegan as they possibly can, but doesn't really care on the same level about changing the world and stopping the rights violations that other people are committing. So if you're an activist who's trying to stop the rights violations by corporations and nations and all the other people in the world than yourself, if you're trying to be an abolitionist or liberationist, then you're inherently taking a consequentialist position, because you're not just trying to purify your own actions, you're trying to change the world. That's consequentialism. So anyway,
well, let's have
I think Lewis is one of the few people that actually understands that and still upholds the deontologist side. So
Gotcha. Yeah, let's set up a talk.
very
Let's do maybe me, you, and Lewis. I don't know if it would specifically be a debate, but it could be. But yeah, I definitely want to get into it further. Real quick though, let's have the last thing we talk about be Angelo asked, utilitarianism and consequentialism, are they the same? Is it just are they synonymous?
No, and one of the reasons I don't say utilitarianism as often is that I think it's become much more fuzzy. It's used in like very different ways. It was the original term, and it kind of specifically related to the very specific set of views that Bentham and Mill held. But it just sometimes people use utilitarianism to mean almost the same thing as any consequentialism, but basically other times people use utilitarianism to mean a certain kind of consequentialism that it has a couple features. One is it's usually hedonist, so it thinks that something called pleasure is the only inherent good and pain is the only inherent bad. Where a lot of consequentialists, including myself, believe that there are lots of other intrinsically good experiences that we shouldn't call pleasure, and other bad experiences that we shouldn't necessarily call pain.
Gotcha.
And then another feature of utilitarianism, classic utilitarianism, is that it's agent neutral, meaning that it has no extra weighting of the individual. So it can't be partially egoistic. You can't say that goodness for you like depends upon your own well-being even a little bit more than other people's well-being, which seems against common sense. But
and that's just a moral stance. So you could take that stance but not want to act upon it.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's the way that I bite that bullet. I say actual moral rightness and wrongness is agent independent. It doesn't allow for me to consider myself as any more valuable than anybody else who's objectively similar to me. But then I just say, well, why do I value myself? Well, because I don't always choose to maximize moral rightness of my actions. I do in fact prioritize myself, but that's not a question. That's not related to how morally right or wrong my action is. So there's that aspect. So I guess I am with the utilitarians in the agent neutrality part, but not in the hedonist part. And then I guess you can be a consequentialist without being a sentientist. So there's that distinction. I guess people who think that humans are the only ones we should care about are still consequentialists, but they're just making a mistake within consequentialism, and sentient consequentialism that draws the boundary at all sentient life is what I think is the correct form. But you could also be a consequentialist who thinks that the things we need to care about inherently go beyond sentience. So it could be you could care about like the well-being of all living things, or even like ecosystems or rivers or oceans or whatever. So that's possible.
The amount of things I want to get into and talk about, because that just makes me think about, like, would you only care about the living things that aren't sentient because of how they affect sentient life? But I actually really do have to go, so I just have to end it on throwing that note out there. But I'll talk to you later, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, take care.